We are in a defining moment for digital humanities, due to several factors including new technologies, the ease in which everyday historians can learn the latest communication techniques, and the desire to learn in a more open and transparent way. The history field is witnessing a new era in growth and possibilities. This is one such project which has garnered praise and allowed those who are curious about the past to engage with primary sources from an era of turmoil and dramatic change. Mississippi was one of the most powerful states in the Union when it seceded and joined the Confederacy. Over the next 16 years, devastating military campaigns, revolutionary emancipation, long-term Army occupation, and groundbreaking legislation redefined the state and the nation. All this can be studied in this rich collection. This is the Civil War and Reconstruction Governors of Mississippi Project. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's live presentation. Welcome to the Tattooed Historian channel here on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you, everyone, for being with us here in the chat and here on our panel. It's great to be here. My name is John. I am the Tattooed Historian, and we are joined by another plethora of historians this evening. We're all just getting together because there were some minor technical issues, so bear with us as we go into this. But first, I want to introduce the two ladies who have been here since the beginning of this whole thing. First off, Dr. Susanna Ural is here, professor of history and co-director of the Dale Center for the Study of War and Society at the University of Southern Mississippi. She is the author of numerous books, articles, editorials, blog posts, columns, and digital history projects that share cutting-edge historical ideas and research with scholars, educators, and the public. Also joining us is Dr. Stephanie Seal-Walter. She is the USM Digital Liaison in the Humanities. Steph earned her PhD from George Mason and focused her studies on loyalism in Virginia during the American Revolution. She's been a leader in the classroom when it comes to digital humanities, and she has the best pug in the world named Bunker. It's not his entire name, but we won't. Yes, he is the best. Our special guests this evening, we have Ranger Barney Scobie is with us, and Dr. David Slay joining us as well. Barney's an interpretive ranger at Natchez National Historical Park, and David is the chief of interpretation at the site. So thank you all for being here with me this evening. Susanna, it looks like a jam-packed evening here on our panel.
It's going to be a good night. Absolutely. I appreciate everybody joining us. Barney, I got to tell you, you came highly recommended from, I can't tell you how many people have been on your tours and said, if we're going to be talking about USCTs and we're going to be talking about unionism and the forgotten story of those experiences, we need to talk to you. So I appreciate you and David making time to join us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Hopefully everyone can hear us. Again, we just got in here and started off here. But this is a very, very important topic, and that's why I'm so glad we're devoting 2 episodes to historical memory, Susanna, because this is a broad and engaging topic and one that impacts us to this day in various ways. So I'm glad that you allowed.
Doc, you guys are breaking up.
Oh, really?
Oh, no.
Oh, it might be an internet issue. Because I'm not to you two, am I?
Yeah,
you guys are breaking up. I can see you fine.
Okay.
But the audio is going in and out. The video is perfect. Wow. But the audio is going in and out.
That's odd. I wonder if it's an internet issue.
This is podcast number 4, and we've had good luck up until this point. So
up until this point,
it's God's.
You got like a max headroom thing going right now.
Oh, wow! We'll have to see. We got everyone who's watching says our sound is good, so it must be on your end, Barney. Maybe I don't know if it's an internet thing or not. It's kind of odd. We never had this issue before, so
Thanks
maybe
to the viewers for
Yes, our viewers are letting us know that the sound is fine from their end. So it's not the entire thing. It might just be their internet there. I'm not sure.
I know. And Barney, I tried to send y'all a message kind of in our internal chat here. I'm wondering, but I don't know if you're going to be able to see it or not.
Yeah, it's on the right-hand side there, Barney, on private chat. You might want to check into that if you can, clicking on that.
Because if we can work it that way, I can at least share the questions in the chat, but I don't know.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone watching, letting us know we're okay on your end.
But you know, to answer your question, John, I mean, there were documents in this collection.
It is up here, private chat.
Just started pointing to this immediately. The fact that, you know, of this Unionist experience in Mississippi, that, you know, these were not kind of rare, kind of momentary experiences. That there are these, you know, thousands and thousands of African Americans who serve for Mississippi, and there's hundreds of white Mississippians who serve the Union cause. And so that was, you know, this is part of that memory that I wanted to talk about, because, you know, it's certainly part of the experience, but it's not actually part of the memory. And, you know, how did that kind of get washed out, if you will?
Mm-hmm. The people who are highlighted in these primary source materials are they're the heart of this whole thing. These are people who, if you're just joining us for the first time, these are people who wrote to the governor of Mississippi during the Civil War and after the Civil War during Reconstruction about various topics. This one, as I've said earlier, is one that should resonate with a lot of us, because how they perceived, as we talked about last week, emancipation, how they perceived the war effort and the close of the war impacts our vision to this day. And as Susanna said, this is a very, very broad, but a broad topic, but one that is being more understood as time goes on because of projects such as this one, because we can digitize these records and now allow these primary sources to be seen sometimes for the first time, especially by people like me who are hundreds of miles away. And to allow us to understand the historical memory of this conflict and the idea of Reconstruction 1.0, as I like to put it. So Susanna, let's intro with some of these personalities while we try to see if we can help Barney out a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're new to the podcast or new to this live stream, the Civil War and Reconstruction Governors of Mississippi Project, we're working with the Mississippi State Archives. This is the Mississippi Department of Archives and History, the Mississippi Digital Library, and a team of historians at the University of Southern Mississippi to digitize, transcribe, and annotate all of the governor's papers for the state from 1859. So that's the start of Pettus's administration, all the way through the Civil War and Reconstruction, and we get a little bit into the New South, ending in 1882. And the reason we're doing this is what John was just hinting at. In the 19th century, just about everybody wrote to their governor if they had a complaint about everything. Rarely are they praising the governor, but it's usually an appeal for help, a complaint, a frustration, a concern. Sometimes they're volunteering some of their assistance. And so it becomes this great way to look at how everyday people, the people we don't often get to hear from as historians, how they experience the revolutionary changes of the Civil War and Reconstruction. So we've kind of broken this collection. John, I'm sure you've already put that link in, or you might if you haven't, but you know, we've broken out some sample documents from the collection just to give you a sense of what you might find. And John's sharing the link for that. If you ever kind of can't find the link, just go to CWRGM.org, click on sample documents, and you'll get there too. And one of the themes that we're looking at in the collection of these sample documents is this theme of memory and commemoration, and how the Civil War is remembered today. That's really kind of different from the stories that we're seeing emerge in the documents, and that's the focus for tonight.
We have we'll try the audio issue with Barney again, because I want to make sure that we have the full effect here of this entire panel. with us this evening. Barney, is this any better? Can you hear us any better? Doesn't seem.
Darn it.
Yeah, darn it. Doesn't want to work for us. Okay, so we'll try a different route with that then. The one thing that we are starting to see with some of these issues with these documents is that in the Reconstruction era, we're starting to see this historical memory taking shape, and how persons are seen based on what their experiences were, but also trying to come to terms with what has transpired, right? Because this is when you start to see like the lost cause narrative start to take hold and some other issues. And this really affects us. And like we're still arguing some of these issues today. What are some of the documents that you've uncovered which really point to coping and thinking about what transpired over a series of years, the 4-year struggle, perhaps? Maybe they're even into like 1863 and are already trying to come to grips with it, or come to grips with the idea that maybe the county over, their friend, has gone a different direction than they have.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the docs, and Steph can speak to this too, because she's been doing so much great background research on the people in them. But I think what you start to see by the middle of the war are these examples of dissent that we've been hinting at in some of the previous episodes, where people, and you see this in all wars, as the war drags on, as forces on both sides are confiscating your food, your crops, your livestock, as conscription laws get passed that you may completely disagree with, you start to see, this dissent from the white population. You also start to see dissent from the enslaved population as they start to seize the opportunity to escape to federal lines, now that, as word quickly spreads that they will not be returned to enslavement. Mm-hmm. So, but one of the things I want to point out is that there are many forms of dissent. And that the folks we're going to be talking about today are the ones who really kind of take that to the next level. And they're not just frustrated with the Confederate government. And that's, again, this is fairly common. I mean, it's almost kind of in the American DNA, if you will. But this is going beyond that. And now they're going to be taking up arms to fight for the federal cause. And this is a whole different experience that we're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
One of the interesting things that I found going through the documents, and also reading Susanna's phenomenal essays that she wrote that are on our sample document site, just to plug that right there. But I'm a shameless digital historian. I always got a sample doc website, right? Yeah. But anyway, going through and seeing how many people, especially in the post-war era, especially if they were Unionists, they wanted some recognition for that. They wanted, because I think they either knew that, this narrative of, the Old South was kind of perpetuating in the Reconstruction era. And there's a man named James H. Pierce who, I'm not going to lie, I'm obsessed with. I love his letter that we have in CWRGM. He writes Governor Sharkey. He's a native of Kentucky. He lives in Mississippi during the Civil War. He marries a Yankee woman whose name is Elizabeth Abernathy. They're from Columbus, Mississippi. She had moved right before the Civil War to become a teacher in Columbus. And she was actually, as soon as the Civil War broke out, she was removed from her position because of her views, because she obviously was anti-Confederate. But he talks about how he avoided the draft. He did absolutely everything that he could to make sure that he wasn't going to give any service to the Confederate Army. He does actually join the Union Army at one point, and he was an ardent Unionist throughout the war. And he writes Governor Sharkey, and he wants recognition for that he never, and he even says that he became obnoxious to his community for his Unionist beliefs. I always love that. That's a revolutionary thing too that I see in my documents all the time, where I became obnoxious. And so he wants people to understand that he was there from the beginning, and he wants the governor to recognize that. And even at the end of his letter says, maybe you should appoint some of us old unionists, to political positions. If you want to show that the tide has really turned in Mississippi, I would love to volunteer for some kind of political service. So he's just a phenomenal figure in this collection. And, if you're interested in some really fascinating unionists, go take a look at James H. Pierce.
Yeah. Barney, are you able to hear us now? I'd love to have you chime in from kind of your perspective also on unionists.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can hear you.
Good. I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about, I know you do a lot of work.
As you know,
Go ahead.
No, well, please touch on what you would like me to talk about. Please do.
Well, good. Nobody ever lets me just ask whatever I want. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
I would love to hear you talk about your work on USCTs.
Miss Susanna, I didn't catch that. You went in and then back out. I'm so sorry for these technical difficulties.
No, don't.
Okay.
Please, we are all in a tech world that does not always cooperate.
I'm so sorry.
I'd love to hear you talk about your work on USCTs. It's coming in and out. Folks, one of the reasons that we really wanted Barney Scobie and
Susanna, I got none of that. I'm so sorry. I got none of that.
That's okay. Steph, will you try to email them a question while we're talking
I'm
here?
so sorry.
No, that's okay.
I'll be sorry.
Okay, well.
Go.
Nope.
Barney, you go ahead. I'm going to use sign language.
If you guys can hear me, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm not mistaken, you guys were touching on the Unionist perspective during the Civil War and somewhat of the 1863 campaign, and as you know, Natchez was somewhat of a sympathetic towards the Unionist scenario. We were in an environment in Mississippi where we had 500 Mississippi soldiers to fight for the Union Army. We had 17,000 USCT soldiers to fight for the Union Army. So that transition, once that transition took place in the summer of 1863, and as you said before, and to piggyback off what you said, there was a large exodus of slaves enlisting, leaving the plantations, leaving the institution of slavery, wanting a better life, leaving the atrocities and horrific treatments of having families separated, and also wanting to put themselves in a situation where they would literally be able to fight for their freedom. So as a result of that, you see slaves leaving plantations from all areas of the Natchez arena, and one exodus and one escape sticks with us quite fondly here in Natchez. It is the escape of Wilson Brown, the Medal of Honor winner. United States Navy, Wilson Brown. They had slaves enlisting all over the proximity of Natchez, and they would record them, and the Union clerk would give you the gist of where they enlisted at. Specific plantations would be named, enlisted at Tacony, enlisted at Fair Oaks, enlisted at this plantation. Well, Wilson Brown's enlistment papers were somewhat sway from the norm, because Wilson Brown escaped from slavery, and as the USS Hartford was sailing down the Mississippi River, Wilson Brown jumped into the river, swam out to the ship, and said he's reporting for duty. So therefore, his enlistment papers said the middle of the Mississippi River.
Wow.
I love it.
Wow. The power of primary sources right there.
Fantastic.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And that's something that we touched on previously, right? Go ahead, Barney. Please,
I would love to touch more. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Barney. Please keep going. Keep rolling. This is awesome.
Well, if I was, like I say, you guys, your feedback is somewhat of a delay.
Yeah.
So it feels as though I'm interrupting you. So if I continue to apologize, that's just the Southern Baptist boy in me. I'm sorry. So,
Barney, I'd love to hear more.
So, to touch more on the,
yeah.
Ma'am, can you hear me?
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay. Outstanding. Thank you. To touch more on the scenario of the USCT Soldier, from the perspective and the information that was given to me through the email, I think that was you, Dr. Ural. Was that you? Mm-hmm. That asked to touch on the USCT experience that I bring into the schools. Yeah. And I thought that was a phenomenal idea. And I first of all want to thank you for allowing me to participate in this format, because the USCT experience is one like no other. And it captivates the soul, especially as an African-American man. You really not only feel the story in your own little way, you in your own state of mind, you start to live it. It becomes a part of your subconscious and your psyche. When I do my programs with the Adams County School District and other school districts, as you know, it's very difficult to maintain the attention of an age group from 6 to 16 years of age with all of these technical devices at hand. So I try, the very first thing I do, and in my presentations, I try to touch on an emphasis that would be a mind catcher, something that shocks the mind to make you say, That way you must immediately get their attention if you plan to get the point across of what a USCT soldier was. And as I have participated in these programs, I found great joy in the input that I've received from not only school board members, teachers, but parents. Nothing is more gratifying to hear a kid come home and a parent tell me while I'm in Walmart, man, my kid really got a kick out of your USCT Soldier story. And as a result of that, it gives you not only a sense of worth, but self-esteem to know that you're really giving back to your ancestral heritage. The USCT Soldier, I always start when I go in that school. When I go in that classroom, I always say, from whence they came. From whence they came. You see, the story of the USCT soldiers is none like no other. From whence the USCT soldier came, to understand that what made him a soldier, he had to have walked 444 miles down the Natchez Trace in a coffle. He had to have survived the journey in the true trail of tears of the exodus of the slaves that were en route in the slave trade that would be a part of what Mississippi's economy would depend upon. Cotton was king. And as my daddy always say, son, cotton don't pick itself. So as a result of that, from whence that he came, from whence that he came. This is an excerpt in 1844 of a traveler coming out of North Carolina. And every time I read this, I picture in my mind the journey of that slave, destination Natchez, forks of the road, the first leg of his journey that will begin and end in turmoil, chaos, brutality, and sometimes murder. This excerpt is from 1844, and I quote, "A single spectacle, the most striking one of the kind I have ever witnessed. It was a camp of Negro slave drivers just packing up to start. They had about 300 slaves with them. They had preceded the night in chains in the woods. These that were conducted to Natchez. The female slaves, some of them sitting on logs of woods, whilst others were standing and a great many little black children were warming themselves by the fire. And to make this spectacle more disgusting, hideous, some of the principal white slave owners, well dressed and had broad brim hats with crepes wrapped around them, stood there laughing and smoking cigars, from whence they came.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're going to take a 444-mile journey through the annals of history. Your destination, if you survive this journey of poor and rancid food, no rest, no relaxation, only cruelty, hard punishment, and continuous moving until you reach that destination called Natchez. The Forks of the Roads is your destination. That destination, once you make it to that Forks of the Road, now that slave has entered into a realm of the next phase of the calamity that he will face or she will face in their lives. The Forks of the Road was described by Joseph Holt Ingram. Joseph Holt Ingram was a professor at Jefferson College. He was a clergyman from Maine. He explained what the forks in the road look like, giving us a vivid description from whence that journey has started. The 444-mile march, the true trail of tears, the insanity, the brutality, and the inhumanity has now brought you to Natchez. You've made it. You've made it. Now the next phase of this journey is that of the Forks of the Road, the second largest slave market in the South. Joseph Holt Ingram, 1830. A mile from Natchez, we came to a cluster of rough wooden buildings in an angle of two rows in front of which several horses, either tied or held by a servant, indicating a place of popular resort. A line of Negroes commits to the entrance. In the entrance, the tallest was maybe 5'8", 5'9", all the way down to a little fella of 10 years of age. They extended in a semicircle, waiting to be inspected. Now you've arrived from whence you've came. This is the next stage of your journey. That next stage is the Forks of the Road. Now that you have made it to the second largest slave market in America, you must now be sold. You must now be sold. You must be separated from your mother. You must be removed from anything that has any familiarity with the infrastructure of family. You will be snatched, kicking and screaming from your wife's arms. You will never see your children again. You have arrived to the Forks of the Road, your next destination, from whence you came. Now it's time to be sold. You have made the arduous journey of 444 miles of pure hell. You have survived the rancid food, the inhumane treatment, the brutality, the beatings, and the murder. You've made it to the Forks of the Road. You're put into a semicircle with the biggest man being no more 5'8", 5'9", and in the middle, a 10-year-old boy. Now it's time to be sold. Who do they want? What are they looking for? The institution of slavery is to do one thing and one thing only: to enlarge a slave owner's territory, to live from sunup to sundown in misery, turmoil, and agony, to live a short life only to be worked to death, if not to be claimed by disease. Your children will eat from a trough. You're a slave. Who do they want? Well, the market is clear. We're advertising blacksmiths. We're advertising draymen. We're advertising seamstresses. We're advertising cotton pickers, field hands, cane choppers. What do you want? To be inspected, to be greased and well dressed in an Irishman vest, to be paraded, to be sold. But there's one that they don't want. There's one that they don't want. And that one that they don't want, from the inspection of a slave by the name of Henry Watson, this is the slave they don't want. From whence they came. The slave that they don't want, Henry Watson, was sold at the forks of the road. But Henry stuck around a while. Henry wasn't really one that they wanted. You see, Henry says, by the most rigorous examination of slaves, by those slave inspectors, the one least desired is the one who possessed any kind of intelligence. For this is the mental inspection of a slave. He is pronounced the most objectable of all other qualities connected with the life of a slave. Hence, they are very careful to inquire whether a slave can read or write. This question has been asked to me often by slave traders and cotton planters while I was there at the market. After conversing with me, they swore by their maker. They swore by their maker they would not have me amongst their Negroes. And they saw the devil in my eyes. For I would run. I would run. They didn't want an intelligent slave. They didn't want the intellect to know that freedom is a God-given right. You can't give anybody freedom. You're born with it. To keep them ignorant is to control. I don't want intellect amongst my Negroes. Knowledge is power and it spreads like a germ. But you know, there's a rumble in the air. There's a rumble in the air, and slaves are hearing things. They're hearing the whispers of freedom. They've survived the arduous task of 444 miles. They have made it to the destination of the horrific, inhumane, terroristic treatments, the separation of family, the brutality of a slave market. They are now in an environment where everything that consists of what makes them anything consists of what that slave owner will give them. You are not a person. There's a whisper in the air. You don't think they heard about 1836? Nat Turner was a prophet, they said. Said God told him to do it. John Brown was a prophet, they said. Said God told him to do it. There's a whisper in the air. And that whisper is war now. You see, July 14th, 1863, Natchez, Mississippi has an epiphany. The 14th, Wisconsin. The 14th, Wisconsin, under Ransom's brigade, has participated in the capture of Natchez and the remaining place until October, when the regiment returns to Vicksburg. It's in the air. Freedom's in the air. Union soldiers on the move. The cannons are being fired in Vicksburg. There's a little battle we're going to talk about in a little bit, but right now, I want to talk about what happened in Natchez. Because I think, Doc, you wanted me to touch on all of those heroic men that served not only in all of the campaigns in the USCT infantry, but those Mississippi soldiers that changed a nation, fighting for a new constitution because the old one was not working.
Yep.
I no longer want to be a slave. Will you fight? Will you fight? Well, the Swain Papers in the Natchez Sentinel talks about the USCT Experience and how they ran from plantations and how Wilson Brown enlisted in the middle of the Mississippi River and how we got 17,000 USCT fighting machines in campaigns all over the state of Mississippi. But down here in Natchez, they described the foundation of the new USCT Soldier. Freedom's in the air. Will you fight? You will sleep encamped in uncomfortable quarters. Will you fight? Sign me up. You will eat the same rancid food that is not much better than the plantation. Will you fight? Sign me up. You will receive less pay than your white counterparts, but you will be expected to fight even harder. Will you fight? Sign me up. Who had more to lose? Who had more to lose? There is no tomorrow. I win or I die. As my family has been removed from my life, my new family becomes my comrade in arms, fighting for those new amendments yet to come, fighting for the freedom to be a man, fighting for full citizenship, the right for the protective of his vote, and the elimination of slavery forever. They described him. The Union Army described them. They said for a couple of weeks, we were drilling in process considering these men were fresh off the cotton field plantations. Many of them have never had a gun in their hand, ignorant, dirt begrimed, and forever denied any of the rights or qualities of manhood. The improvement was apparent to the most casual observer. The moment he put that uniform on, they said he became erect, self-reliant, and proud consciousness was newly acquired. I get to shoot my oppressors. Sign me up. Will he fight? Will he fight? Well, the first one comes. And the test has been placed on the 6th Heavy Artillery. You see, they were sent out on a foraging campaign. And as we've already established, these soldiers, these USCT soldiers, some are fresh off the plantation, has not had a chance to be drilled properly, does not know the working mechanisms of a 58 caliber Springfield with a 40-inch barrel. They're literally learning as they go and running off courage. Pure, unbridled, enthusiastic USCT, I want to be free and I will shoot my oppressor courage. Well, it's about to go down. It's about to go down and the test is relevant. 6, on the foraging campaign. Captain Hitchcock, Confederate, it's over in the Louisiana area. The 6th in this foraging campaign had stopped for orders as they followed forward. It said Captain Hitchcock, not knowing the strength of his opposers, fell back a short distance. And then the attack. It is then the USCT 6 jumps into action. Colonel Smith takes the guard forward to the road after marching more than a mile, ordered a halt, threw out a picket to follow the enemy. It became the very few moments before a volley was heard. And then another volley was heard. And still another one. And he immediately double quick back his men back arriving. Too late to participate in the engagement. But it was seen then that Sachs captain ordered Hitchcock to surrender, firing at the same time the revolver at Corporal Thomas Silly, who dropped unhurt at his knees and sent the ball to the miscreant breast, which proved fatal. It was rather hard for Southern chivalry to be cleaned out by an equal number of Negroes. Will you fight? I got nothing to lose. If I lose, I die. There are no quarters for me. There is no hostage negotiation for me. Fort Pillar is a year away. Fort Pillar is a year away. The insanities and the brutalities of slavery really groomed the USCT soldier to understand that there is no tomorrow. I would rather die in my grave than live another day as a slave. It goes back to the old civil rights song. When they moved from the nonviolent perspective in late '68 to the Black Power symbolism of violence. And they sung a song. And I think about that USCT soldier once he made up his mind, it's freedom or death. They sang a song. And that civil rights song, it says, freedom got a shotgun. Freedom got a shotgun. Freedom gon' shoot it, boom, boom, boom. Freedom gon' shoot it, boom, boom, boom. Freedom got a shotgun. Freedom got a shotgun. Freedom gon' shoot it, boom, boom, boom. Freedom gon' shoot it, boom, boom, boom. There is no tomorrow. I win or I die. Let's talk about what made them the USCT fighting machine that cemented their historical stance, their ability to fight their oppressors, never to turn and run from those that oppressed, maimed, killed, beat, and separated them. You want to fight? Let's fight. It's June 7th. We are by Vicksburg now. We got ourselves a 58 caliber 1863 Springfield equalizer with a 40-inch barrel. It's time to go to war. It's time to cement our place in history as a USCT fighting machine of men, no longer slaves. You'll never take my child again from me. You'll never take my woman from me again. I'm gonna die old and happy with my family. I'm gonna die young and brave on this ground. But either way it go, I'm fighting. Dawn is coming. Dawn is coming. You see right across the river over in Louisiana, you got Walker's Texas Division marching to try to rescue Vicksburg. The Anaconda plan is in place. Total stranglehold. Nothing in, nothing out. Rivers in deadlock. Starvation. Pets are not even safe in the river city in Vicksburg. You got Walker's Division coming over there from Louisiana. And you got the USCT soldiers given the task to make sure Walker's Division don't cross that river. It's USCT time to shine. It's June 7th. And it's 1863. You see, Milliken Beers consisted of the 13th and the 11th USCT infantry and 120 of the 23rd Iowa infantry. We got ourselves a fight. Walker's Texas Division is right across the river. USCT's job, don't let him cross that river. He ain't getting across the Mississippi. Not today. The 11th, the 13th, 120 men of the 23rd. It's time to go to war. It is dawn. It has begun. As the fighting started at dawn, the Federal opposed that morning Brigadier General Henry E. McCullough in charge of the Walker Texas Division. The 16th Texas Infantry and the 16th Texas Cavalry, they're on the move, they're on the march. Attack dawn. At dawn, the attack comes. When at dawn, that attack comes, the USCT soldiers stand valiantly. They stand tall. It's ready to lock, load, and aim. But then again, you must realize these individuals that are operating these mechanized guns have only been off that plantation maybe a month or less. They don't know how this thing works. And it says in the battle, before they could get off more than 2 shots, the lines collapsed. Now we bagging back, but we still fight. Now we are fighting. It is hand to hand. It is bloody. There is no surrender, no retreat. You must hold your ground. USCT Soldier, Walker's Texas Division advances again. Second advance, USCT falls back again. But at this time, there is no cock no percussion, no powder, no ram load, no load. What are we doing now? Now we go to school. USCT soldier from whence he came. He came from slavery. He came from hard labor. He came from sunup to sundown, from can to can't. What has become his possession now? That slave that they didn't want, them ones with the intellect. And intellect finna kick in now. Why? Simple. Because now I don't need this gun to lock, load, aim, and fire. I don't need it to do that now. Now it's a tool. What have I done my whole life as a slave? I've shoveled. I've pickaxed. I've bailed. I've hoed. I've raped. Now that 18-inch bayonet becomes a tool. Walker, Texas Division, you in trouble. They halt that second advance. And when that second advance is halted by the USCT soldier, then comes the rain. Then comes the rain. And I'm not talking about the rain of God's holy water that is spread upon the land that will wet that ground with freedom. I'm talking about fire from the Choctaw and the Lexington. Fellas, we got rain. They making it rain. And as they make it rain, the gunfire from the Choctaw, the gunfire from the Lexington fills the field. Walker is in retreat. Walker's down. USCT soldiers advance, hold the field and command the day, cementing that day. The ultimate compliment. Ultimate compliment. Even the Confederates said they fought like hell. I ain't got nothing to lose. USCT, straight fighting machine. From the battlefields of the 54th to the skirmishes in Natchez, to all those that massacred at Pillow, the valiant charge at Wagner, to on that day in June 7 when the Walker, Texas Division never crossed the Mississippi River. There was never a question about will you fight. Now the USCT soldier's story, like I said, it is one like no other. Because as it is one like no other, you think about the atrocities of their oppressors. You think about from whence they came. You think about the inhumanities of systemic racism and white supremacy. You think of them fighting against the inhumanities of second-class citizenship, shedding their blood to be equal. Even after 1866, when the USCT soldiers were disbanded, they went on to have distinguished military careers, but even their emancipators sometimes used the evil eyes of racism to eliminate the Black soldier from full prosperity as a soldier. You know, you think about the 21 members of the 49th USCT charged with mutiny only because they had food, spoiled meat, rotten bread, and mutilated candles. They protested. And that protest led to mutiny. 21 of these soldiers who had fought for their freedom from whence they came from the 444 trek of tears to be charged with mutiny, dishonorably discharged, and to hang. Or you think about the aspect of leadership and knowledge, preparing these new leaders with the scholastic aptitude that would be needed to lead a new nation, as Dubose said, with their talented tent, only to never be able to lead a USCT squadron or brigade, only to be led by white officers, even to return in 1864 to tear down and demolish the slave quarters that held them. The same blood, anguish, sweat, and tears in that wood is now housing white officers. You're emancipators. Only to fight in the horrific war between the states to eliminate the institution of slavery, to only have our first commissioned United States officer, Henry Orion O'Shan Flipper, class of 1877, West Point, given his first command of the 10th Cavalry Buffalo Soldiers, the first commissioned officer. The first commissioned officer. But as this first commissioned officer, he is court-martialed for derelict of duty, dishonorably discharged and removed from service. This is the first commissioned officer, the very first commissioned officer. It is not till his family fought in 1991. Because see, Henry O'Shan Flipper died in 1940, but he retired working under the assistant of the United States Department Secretary of Interior. This man still served his country as an assistant to the Secretary of Interior after being dishonorably discharged, only for the color of his skin. Our first officer. It wasn't until 1999 when Bill Clinton, 118 years later, gave Henry O'Shan Flipper a full pardon and restored him into his military rank. Now, as I conclude, I always like to give a face to my kids, because they love the gun too. They love the gun. They love the gun. What can I say? We're in Mississippi. We love guns. I'm sorry. But I try to give it a face. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Josh Gordon, a man, a USCT fighting machine, a Fort Milliken's, a member of the 11th Louisiana Infantry, Battle of Milliken Bend hero, ran away at 15 years of age and joined the Union Army. Fought as an honorable man to die in Greenville, Mississippi in 1900. A man. This picture, if only eyes could talk. Now, as I have concluded, we have touched upon the indignities. We have touched upon the sacrifice, and we have touched upon the accolades. But we still have work to do. The African-American soldier has shown patriotism like no other. From the Revolutionary War, the massacre starts with a man by the name of Crispus Attucks, black man. To the Civil War, the USCT soldiers, fighting machines. To the Spanish-American War, with those Rough Riders who soon become Buffalo Soldiers, charging San Juan Hill. To World War I, when them doughboys had a couple of people called Harlem Hellfighters. The French requested them. So World War II, when them guys called Tuskegee Airmen with them red tails, they were not only assigned, they were requested. Only to fight for a constitution. All they wanted in return was that constitution to fight for them. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you. And it's been a blast. God bless you. God keep you.
Barney, that was incredible.
Amazing.
That I don't know if I want to go to war or go to church now. Like that was phenomenal. Yeah.
It's this right there showcases one, the power of Barney as an interpreter.
Holy
power
moly.
that you can have as an interpreter from primary sources like we've been discussing for weeks now, and we will continue to discuss. And just how impactful the message can be to anyone who cares to listen, and many people need to listen. And I think that is such a powerful presentation. I've done interp for 25 years. Barney is at the head of my list.
Yep. I told you. Everybody raves about him. Mr. Scobie, I gotta thank you. One of the things we wanted to convey tonight to people, it's really two things. One, the experiences and the story of the USCTs that just have been lost. And number two, how people in the Park Service like yourself are doing such a good job of getting those stories out to the public, so the public can start to think about this and really wrestle with this so that it does become part of Civil War memory again. I'm also smart enough to not talk too much after you because I'm just going to look bad. That was fantastic.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm the same way. I'm just like, I'm ready to wrap it because I can't top it.
That was phenomenal. Like I got a message from my husband in the middle of that, and he's like, we need to go to Natchez and listen to Barney again.
Everybody needs to go to Natchez. And by the way, I just got to say, the folks at Natchez National Historical Park, when I called over there, because I told them I'd heard amazing things about Mr. Barney Scobie. Nobody has time right now for anything. We're all exhausted, and they jumped. Kathleen Bond jumped in. David Slay's been helping tonight. The historical staff, everybody, but especially you, Mr. Scobie. Thank you. We got to have you back. This is great.
I'm going to drive from Pennsylvania just to shake his hand.
I'm telling
you.
And I know there's a sound delay, so he's hearing all of this.
He's hearing
it. 6 seconds later.
That's fine. But I do want to say that this is one of the most powerful presentations I've ever witnessed on any of at least my stuff, and I know a lot of other people's. But I do want to give a shout out to the project as well, which has encompassed so much of our time these last few weeks. I've placed the links into the comment section for CWRGM. I would love for all of you in the chat, whether you are on YouTube or Facebook, to go check out the site and to remember also that you can volunteer to transcribe these amazing documents from so many Mississippians whose voices need to be heard. And you can help do that. And that is one great way to volunteer to tell the story of one state and think about what you can do in your own state as well with that. Susanna, next week we are continuing about historical memory, correct?
Yes. Our guest next week is Dr. Ann Sarah Rubin, who's written a lot about memory in the Civil War, and we're going to be talking about this and some of the other documents as well. I should let our viewers know, our listeners, I should say, and viewers, that our volunteers are so good. We're running out of documents at the moment. You guys are out transcribing us. Wow. But there's going to be some documents are going to be trickling in, and then we're going to get flooded with a bunch again starting in the summer. But you know what? In the meantime, go visit your local Civil War National Park Service site. Go support the folks out there like Barney Scobie, and who are just doing fantastic work and just educating the public.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And me too.
Yes. Yes. Thank you all for being part of this panel tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate the invite.
It's our pleasure. It was definitely our pleasure to have you on here, Barney. Thank you so much for your time and for that amazing presentation. It was outstanding. Thank you, everyone in the comments section, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube. Thank you so much for tuning in and for being a part of this. Remember that we will be back next week at the same time, continuing our thoughts on the historical memory alongside this project. So please be safe, be well, take care of yourselves, and keep reading. We need to keep reading. That's the main thing. Keep reading those primary source materials. Thank you, everyone, again. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.